before the sun. Look at that sunrise. Isn't that gorgeous? All right, sun is up. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to my garden. We are out here early today, we as in Jason and I, because unfortunately it's going to be another triple-digit day. We're so close. We're so close to fall weather, but we're just not quite there yet. It's taking its sweet time. So when it's this hot, Jason and I try and get up really early and try and get out here so that we can get all of our planting done, all of our garden chores done before it gets too hot. And we can basically be inside by noon, which is such a bummer because we have all day. It's just too hot. So I'm really excited for some fall weather that we can start extending out our gardening time. So anyway, for this morning, what I want to do is I want to get a very special plant in the ground, actually two of them. And those are Eden climbing roses. Now, I cannot even tell you all how much I miss my old Eden climbing roses. So for those of you who watched my channel when we lived in our last house, you'll probably remember we had this beautiful rose arch with Eden climbers on either side. It was stunning. It was so very beautiful. When it was in bloom, I think every day I went out there and took pictures of it. I saw people walking by taking pictures of it too, and everyone would compliment me and say how gorgeous it was and ask what rose it was. It's just an absolutely beautiful rose. And I ended up leaving it there when we sold the house. Mostly because I had to, because when the buyers saw our garden, they actually complimented the rose arch specifically and said how much they loved it. So I know it's what helped sell our house. It's one of the things that helped sell our house. So I felt like I couldn't take it with me. I regret that now, but that's okay. I can plant another one. That one was only about 3 years old, so I'm just kind of behind about 3 years. So that's all right. Anyway, and I have driven by since then, since we sold it, and seen it this spring. Oh my goodness, the rose arch was beautiful. The blooms were all over the top. No, I did not take pictures or videos because I want to respect their privacy, but just trust me when I say it was absolutely beautiful. So anyway, I had to get new Eden climbing roses. And so I got them from the exact same place I got them last time, which is Heirloom Roses. And Heirloom Roses, I think it's the reason why it was so successful, I guess I should say, because heirloom roses are their own root roses. Basically, you can get roses that are grafted onto rootstock, or you can get own root roses. And all of heirloom roses are own root roses. And I think that that really helped the Eden climber establish really quickly and really just be absolutely stunning, absolutely so beautiful. So I am planning to plant my Edens in the long border, where I'm not totally sure yet. I still have to decide, but I do know that I'm going to plant them on an arch that I have, because I saw a picture on Pinterest actually like this, and it was so beautiful. And as soon as I saw that, I thought, okay, that's where I'm going to plant my Edens. I have other plans for arches, you know, in the willow tree garden bed. I'm going to do a whole arch installation, but we're just not there yet. But the long border is kind of like a cottagey style border, so I thought that a rose arch would be absolutely beautiful there. So I have 2 Edens to go on either side of the arch. So Eden climbing roses were introduced in actually 1985. So they're pretty old, they're pretty well established, but it's so funny because apparently the Eden climbing roses were not very popular when they were first introduced. It took a couple years for them to, I don't know, for people to accept them, which is crazy to me because they're this beautiful, beautiful pink center with this creamy white outside. The very first time I ever saw an Eden climbing rose, Jason and I were at a wedding in Carmel, and we were walking around looking at all the beautiful gardens in this coastal town. I mean, if you ever have a chance to visit, go visit because it's gorgeous. And I saw one house and it had a white fence and it had roses growing on it, and they were the most beautiful roses I had ever seen. Do you remember that?
do remember that.
Oh my gosh, it was, I mean, and I didn't know what they were at the time. I didn't know what they were, and I actually did a video where I put a picture up and I asked a whole bunch of viewers if they knew what the rose was. And the consensus was it was an Eden climber. And once I planted it and it grew and I saw it in real life again, it was definitely the Eden climber. It's such a beautiful rose. So I don't know if you all know this. I didn't know this. There is actually a Rose Hall of Fame. Of course there's a Rose Hall of Fame because all the Rosarians are absolutely obsessed with their roses. I mean, rightfully so, but the World Federation of Rose Societies actually gives awards for the Rose Hall of Fame, and it's basically the world's favorite rose. And every 3 years, they award another rose the title of world's favorite rose. And Eden Climber got that award in 2006. It's basically the highest title a rose can get, which is the highest award a rose can get, which is super cool. There are a whole bunch of different varieties, which I had fun kind of flipping through. You guys should check it out. I'll put a link in the description down below. But there was, let's see, there was Iceberg was in there, Lady Banks Rose was in there, Cecile Bruner was in there, which was fun. Charles de Mille. I had never heard of this one. It's like this deep violet color and it's supposed to be almost thornless, which I just think is really, really neat. And then another one that I thought was neat that now I want in my garden is called Fragrant Cloud. It's like this coral colored, red coral color rose, and it's supposed to smell absolutely incredible. So now I have a new list of roses that I want to get in my garden based on the Rose Hall of Fame. But Eden is on that list, and Eden deserves to be on that list for sure. So it is early October, which is a great time to plant your roses. You want to get your roses in about 6 weeks before your first frost. I am super ahead of my first frost. I think I'm like 8 weeks or something like that. But fall is such a good time to be planting your roses. And that's actually what I did on my last rose arch. I planted them, I think in early November, I want to say. So I'm a little bit earlier than that, but I think that they'll be fine. So I'm showing you all this spot right here because this is the spot that I landed on. Let me show you our arch. It's just laying on its side right now. This was in our center island this whole year. I had some tithonia growing on it. The tithonia honestly didn't do that well, probably because the soil wasn't amended. But we're just gonna take this beautiful rusty arch and put it right in front of the fence. And I think that that will give a look of a cottage garden, don't you think?
That'll be nice.
I know, that would be so pretty. You liked that picture I showed you.
Yes.
Yeah,
for
it
sure.
was gorgeous.
That was nice in front of the fence. And plus the fence is black and so it'll pop off it.
Oh, it'll be gorgeous. So let's move the arch over first, make sure it's where we want it. Now I do want to say we have a tree here and we have a purple hopseed tree here, but I think that it is so open that it's going to definitely get at least 6 hours of sun, which is what you want. 8 hours is even better. I think we're going to get plenty of sun right here. So we've got the arch where we want it. I think that's going to be really pretty, and especially with maybe some like grasses over here on this side. Ooh, I think that that'll be gorgeous. So now all we have to do is plant these 2 roses. And like I was saying, they're own root roses. So they don't have a graft union. And so what that means is that you can plant these pretty deep, which is fantastic because the deeper you plant them, they're kind of like tomatoes. The deeper you plant them, the more roots will come and the more stable these roses will be in response to wind or response to some unnamed dog bumping up against them, and then they'll also bloom better because they'll have more roots. So that's a really big benefit of own root roses. There is some debate on the graft union for grafted roses, whether you plant them deep and cover the graft union with soil or whether you keep it above the soil or at the level of soil. I don't know. I think that there's no exact way to do it. I think it depends on, you know, your soil moisture, how much rain you have, all that kind of stuff. But using own root roses makes it almost foolproof because you know you can plant it. They recommend planting it about an inch deeper than where the soil level is where the pot came from. And by they, I mean heirloom roses. So I will be planting these relatively deep. Okay, so we've got the arch placed where we want it. I already have that rose planted. I wanted to show you guys a little closer up of planting this rose. Again, the key for these roses is their own root roses. So it just makes life super easy. So I'm just going to put in a biotone starter fertilizer, and what this is not a like a granular fertilizer. It's a slow release, and what it does is it helps with root growth. So it's not going to burn the roots or anything like that, which is one of the things that Heirloom Roses recommends, is to not use a granular fertilizer for the first year, because their own root roses, they don't want to burn the baby roots that might not be strong enough. And so using a liquid fertilizer when it's fertilizing time is important, but biotone starter fertilizer is kind of a planting fertilizer, and they're known for being very, very gentle on the roots. So I'm just going to take this out. I don't need to rough up the roots at all. I'm going to put it in, and again, we want this to be planted fairly deep, deeper than I normally ever recommend for planting plants. So I'm just going to tuck it back in and then plant it about an inch higher than it was sent to me in the can. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow up with a couple inches of mulch. Mulch is super, super important. Not only is it going to keep it warm this first winter, but it's going to keep the moisture in once it starts getting hot next spring. I have a dog all up in my face. So as for care, for rose care, January is the prime month, at least for me, where I live in Northern California, Zone 9B. Check with your local master gardeners or your local rose society of when you should be pruning your roses, when you should start fertilizing your roses, when you should spray for any issues, any fungus or anything like that on your roses. But for me, I know January is the key month for us for roses. So January is when the roses are dormant, and when it's a good time to prune your roses, and when it's a good time to spray your roses, like with a copper fungicide or something like that. Now, because these guys are babies and I just planted them right now, I don't think I'm going to have to do anything in January other than possibly defoliating them. So if you live in a warm area like I do, is sometimes roses don't get the message that it's time to go to sleep because it stays too warm. And so what you want to do is you want to say, okay, it's time to go to sleep. It's time to go dormant. And so you actually defoliate your roses. And so you can do that, I don't know, like November, December, sometimes January if it still hasn't happened naturally. If you live in a cold enough area, you obviously don't have to worry about that. Your rose will lose all its leaves. Don't have to worry about it. Because these are from Heirloom Roses, and by the way, I do have a discount code, Fall Roses 20 for 20% off until Halloween. So get your roses if you're thinking about planting them in the fall. They are adamant about not fertilizing your roses with a granular fertilizer the first year. So that means not putting rose tone on, not putting the Van Wenden's secret mix on, any of that kind of stuff. And if it's not Heirloom Roses, then I will put the Van Wenden's mix on the first year, because those roses were grown differently. But because Heirloom Roses grew their roses a specific way and their own root roses, I am only going to be fertilizing these with liquid fertilizer for the first year. My favorite liquid fertilizer is Neptune's Harvest Rose, the rose one. I'll put it right here, and I'll put a description down below I'll put a link in the description down below. That to me is just fantastic. It smells absolutely horrible, but the roses really, really like it, and you can tell that they're really happy when you give them that. So I'm not going to start giving them that until next spring, once I see a couple inches of growth, so that I know they're out of their dormant period. But it's just kind of something to think about. With roses, you do have to give a little bit more care, and you have to know your rose care schedule. So it's something that's really good to kind of get figured out in your mind, in your own garden, so you know, okay, January, time to prune the roses. March, time to fertilize the roses, you know, and so on and so on. And I did want to say, I am not pruning these roses now. I will not be pruning these roses in January, but next January I will be pruning them. And because they're climbing roses, I actually need to start training the leaders horizontally so that I get the maximum amount of blooms out of these roses. Blooms will come from horizontal canes, which is what you want. So you kind of want to get as much horizontal growth as you possibly can. I will not be doing that in this video, but I will link a video at the end and also in the description so that you guys can see how to start training your climbing roses for the maximum amount of blooms. And I have to say, it really does work. It really does make such a huge difference, because the canes that I trained to go horizontally versus the canes that I just let go straight up, big difference in blooms. So the last thing I'm going to do today for these roses is I'm going to put some mulch on. And Jason and I haven't really been mulching the area because we're going to do a big wood chip mulch once we finish all the planting, basically in spring. But because these are baby roses and I want to take care of them, I want to make sure that I mulch them up over the winter. So we just have a couple bags of mulch. This is the pathway mulch. This is the one that Robbie uses, and I used it at my last house too. And I'm just going to put a couple inches, like 3 to 4 inches, around these roses. Now, I think I can speak for Jason. I would love to use this mulch all over our garden. The reason why we use wood chips is just because of cost. It's just, our garden is just too big to be able to fill the whole thing up with bags or even bulk mulch. Right now, we have other things we need to spend our money on, right?
That's right.
All right, so just a couple inches. And again, you don't have to worry about planting this too deep. It's going to be happier if you plant it too deep. All right, so just like that, water that in. I am going to put drip irrigation on this, and I always put 1 gallon per hour. So many people ask me what size drip irrigation or what size emitter you put on your plants. It's different for everybody, so it's really hard to give a good answer. But for me, I'm going to be putting 1 gallon per hour emitters on my roses. Roses like a lot of water, but they don't like sitting in water. So you want to give your roses plenty of water. Therefore, the 1 gallon per hour that we're probably going to run every day, except for in the winter, we'll probably decrease it to every other day. So they'll get plenty of water, but they won't be sitting in water. Oh, I like this mulch. Okay. About 3 to 4 inches of mulch. We're gonna water these in, and that's it. Do you have anything else you want to say, Jason?
I like that mulch too.
I hope you all enjoyed this, and I hope you all have a chance to get in your garden today.